I've got a very special guest today, former Raiders offensive coordinator Tom Walsh. He coached Bo Jackson, Marcus Allen, Jim Plunkett, Cliff Branch, Todd Christensen, a whole lot of Hall of Famers. And he recently started doing a little work with Raiders Today, which is part of the SI network. I saw it. It was great. And now Tom has been generous enough to work with me. Tom, how you doing?
I'm doing well, Grant. Glad to be with you.
Well, thanks for coming on. I really love the podcast you did with Hondo Carpenter, and I had to ask you some questions about the 49ers. So let's get right into it. As a offensive coach yourself, when you watch what Kyle Shanahan's been doing for a long time, what do you admire about him as an offensive coordinator and a coach?
You know, Grant, I tell you, the one thing about which I really enjoy watching Kyle is the opening series of the game. The one thing he does well, you give him that first series, you give him the week of preparation. He has some very unique movement schemes and some excellent play action passes. And he strikes early. Uh, he takes a few shots down the field. He's always got something with multiple shifts and motions, kind of probing with the defense. And then he has a shot play in there. And I think his first series is really creative, designed well, and has a lot of thought to it.
I believe the Niners scored more touchdowns on their opening series than any other team last year. And as an offensive coach, I could see watching the script. You made tons of scripts. So I could see you admiring that. Do you feel he has one of the better opening scripts in the league, like up there with Andy Reid?
He does. And I tell you, the one thing about it is the ability of the run game for the 49ers really helps set up his play action package. So when you start out your first series, you know, you're able to either come with the run and then follow it up sequentially with the play action off of the run. So now you're giving the defense a similar look, creating pressure on the secondary to fill as the eighth defender in the box, for example. You get a single high coverage, whether it's a three deep or a man or a three deep zone scheme. And you got a shot pass in there as well. And, you know, it's a momentum builder for the offense to start well like that and to move down the field and matriculate the length of the field and put the ball in the end zone.
Kyle Shanahan replaced Chip Kelly, who was supposed to be an offensive genius. But I remember with him, it seemed like his run plays and his play action plays didn't really match up that well. And with Kyle, it seems like his runs and his play actions really do look alike.
Well, that's what makes it so successful. And you're giving the defense the same look continuously. Where Chip was running, he was running plays, and they weren't, you know, compatible, and they were not mirrored on the run action, and you know, it doesn't work as well.
Let me ask you about one more question about the opening script. How collaborative is that process? Like, do you think he asked his dad, "Hey, Dad, you want to take a look at what I got cooked for this week," or is that was it all you when you were doing the opening script?
No, actually, our philosophy at the Raiders was we wanted a united, combined effort, and we put everybody up on the board, and we'd have big meetings on Tuesday when we started putting together the game plan, and we had whiteboards all across the room. Just, you know, the whole place was a whiteboard, and you just started on one end and just went around the horn, and you know, you could have 40, 50 plays up there by 5 or 6 coaches. Nowadays, you got 30 coaches. It's a circus. And back then, we had 8. That was it.
Okay, let's look at the other side of the coin with Kyle Shanahan. He's accomplished a whole lot as a coach, but he hasn't won a Super Bowl, and he's never been the coach of the year. He's missing a little hardware. Someone who has 2 Super Bowl rings, where does Kyle Shanahan need to improve to finally get over the hump?
Okay. Let me say this about that. There comes a point in the game as a head coach, and he's the play caller as well. You got to know how to close out the game. I hate to say it that way. It's kind of blunt, but you know, when you got a lead like he has had in, I believe, 3 Super Bowls, one is a coordinator in Atlanta, 2 is the head coach in the Niners, and he's been ahead 28 to 3. He was up by 25 points against Brady midway through the third quarter. I believe he was up twice against Andy Reid in the fourth quarter, was he not?
He was.
I'm sorry, but the great guys know how to close out the game. And the bottom line is you have to have a script in your mind and you have to have rehearsed it as a coach, as a play caller. Okay, I'm going to put you in situational football. We're going to practice this. We're up by 9 and there's X amount of time in the game. The ball's going to be on this position of the field. Here's what we're going to do to seal the deal. And you've got to practice it. You've got to script it. The players have to know what to anticipate from you and how you're going to go about shutting the door on the opponent.
Yeah. I love that. So it comes back to a script. You said what you like most about Kyle is his script when it's 0-0 in the first quarter. It's a great script. But where's the script in the fourth quarter when he's up 7?
But see, that's the point. He has to understand that you have to have multiple scripts for certain situations. And it's about situational football. And you've got to be able to orchestrate that during the week. And you just can't put the ball on the ground after your first series and just call plays. The bottom line is he may have plays early in the game that he likes to feature to attack the defense and a play action pass and a shot pass over here. And he does have some creative play action schemes early in the game. But then where do they go? Where are his after halftime scripts? Where are his 4-minute scripts? Where are his scripts that, okay, you're up by 7 and there's 8 minutes to go on the clock? Now, how am I going to grind the game? How am I going to milk the clock? How am I going to be able to take the air out of the ball from the opponent? I can't let Mahomes get back on the field. So now, the classic case in this past Super Bowl, and you are more tuned in than I, but in the third quarter, I believe the Chiefs started with the ball and threw an interception. And the Niners were up by how many points at that time?
7.
7, at least. Now, that would be a great opportunity right there from Kyle's perspective to be able to take momentum back in the Niners' favor. You shut down. You got the interception. You turned over Mahomes. You got him off the field. Now, I would like to have him go cool off and sit on the bench and keep Mahomes on the bench for a while. I want to run the clock right now. I want to bring back my run game. I want to knock him off the line of scrimmage. I want to be able to keep the momentum I just gained from my defense turning the ball over. Instead, I think at that point in that third quarter when he had 9 or 11 passes, 2 of which were completes, and he ran the ball 2 or 3 times, and he has a McCaffrey who's supposed to be the offensive player of the year and all that. You got to go back to the base. You got to run the ball. You got to start and get the momentum back on your side. You got to be able to swing the game over to yourself. He had a great chance there to really put himself up by 2 scores and eat up a lot of clock time.
Yeah, he had 3 Super Bowls to prove that he was a closer, that he could close the deal, and he couldn't do it in any of them. So my question is it easier to call plays in the first quarter when you're not really worried about the clock and the score is close than it is when you're got 8 minutes left and it's very much about the situation?
No, because by that point, you've got a tremendous feel for the game. You have all the momentum. You have a great tendency on what the opponent's doing. See, the thing about it, when you start a ball game, you start calling plays, you've worked on what you think the defense is going to do and what they have shown you and what their tendencies are against you previously in your history against them. But then as the game unfolds, I see how the defensive coordinator may now have altered his mindset. The bad thing about it is you as an offensive coordinator have a feeling of what the opponent's going to do. You got your players who you want to feature. It's like my quarterback is a blackjack dealer, and I got Kittle, I got Debo, I got Ayuk, I got Juice, I got McCaffrey. I've got a deal card. I got to give them all a pat hand. So I've got to get them all in the game early. And while I'm doing that at the same time and featuring each one of them and establishing them as a weapon, I'm also probing how the defense is responding to what I'm doing to my motions, my shifts, and my formations. So now I get a feel for it. I've got a guy upstairs charting everything, what they're doing against all my sets with the motions and the shifts. Are they squirming safeties? Are they bumping it? Are they traveling with corners with wide receiver motion and all that kind of stuff that you go through? And then as the game progresses now, I have built a book on what the defense is doing today. So by the time I get to the third or fourth quarter, I have a better feeling. It's like in baseball, I'm up at bat my third or fourth time in the seventh or eighth inning. I now have, especially if the same pitcher's in the game, I got a book on him and he's got a book on me, but I have a good idea of how he pitched me the first two or three at bats. So what can I anticipate now with my next? Same thing with the defense, giving me another a set for another offensive series. I got a feel.
So what you're saying for Kyle Shanahan, the way he can improve, what he needs to improve is closing the deal late in games with a lead. And the way to improve it is to actually rep it in practice, do situational football, tell the team this is the score, this is the time left. How often do you feel teams do that anymore with these abbreviated practices? And how much did you do it back in the day?
With the way the schedule is set now and your time restraints and your meeting restraints and things, situational football is more important now than ever. You just cannot put the ball on the ground on a hash mark and just run plays. And the ball stays there and you just crank out plays. It's not about running plays anymore. It's about running situations and what you're going to do in those situations to be able to take advantage of the opportunities about how to run out the clock, how to come from behind. Do I need 3 points? Do I need 6 points? Do I need 2 scores? That all is what I have to practice to be able to put the players in the mindset and the assistant coaches in the mindset about what's going to happen on Sunday if those situations arise.
Okay, let's switch gears a little bit. Oh, sorry about that, Tom. Keep going.
No, the bottom line, Grant, is I'm going to run plays with a purpose, not just run plays. Mm-hmm. Each play during practice has to have a purpose as to why it's being run. What is the situation? Where is the ball? Where's the down in the distance? What's the clock time? What's the score? Are there openers or am I trying to close out the game? Am I trying to catch up? Am I playing from ahead or am I playing from behind? What's the weather conditions like? What do I have to practice with a wet ball because the forecast is for 80% rain or whatever? I got to do that. So all week, the whole thing is set red zone, high red zone, low red zone, down in distance situations. That's all got to be orchestrated. You are like the maestro and your players are like the orchestra. It's like the Boston Pops. It's like the symphony and you are the maestro. You got the baton in your hand as a play caller. And now you got to be able to get which part of the orchestra you want. Do I want the brass? Do I want the strings? Whatever. That's what you're doing as a play caller. You got to bring those guys to life and you got to put it together.
Yeah. And it seems to me that with the 49ers, during the regular season, they're so stacked on offense. They get out to these big leads, and a lot of times in the fourth quarter, they don't really have to play situational football. It's kind of like, just hit the starters and have them wear caps on the sideline. But in the playoffs, it's a whole different thing. And it seems like maybe this is something that they overlook. They don't practice enough because if you can keep the game close against the Niners, as the Chiefs have shown, you can take them down at the end. So this is something they got to make as a point of emphasis.
Well, the other thing, too, is, you have to practice in adverse situations or also practice in prosperous situations. You got to be able to practice how to play when you're ahead, and you got to be able to practice how to play when you're behind. And so you've got to create that environment. Everyone thinks, take it for granted we're ahead. We can just run our plays. Well, no, what specific plays do you want to run when you are ahead so that you can, as I say, close out the game? And you've got to practice that. Here's how we're going to shut it down. This is how we're going to maintain control. This is how we're going to continue to dominate and continue momentum in our favor in the fourth quarter. These are the key runs and play actions and dropbacks that we're going to utilize to seal the deal.
Well, if Kyle Shanahan had this part of his game down, it's possible that he would have 1, 2, maybe 3 Super Bowl rings right now.